Colonel Tom Parker controlled every aspect of Elvis Presley's legendary career. But the man who turned a truck driver into the king of rock and roll was hiding something so dark that he spent 50 years running from it. The secret he kept didn't just shape his life, it destroyed Elvis's. The person the world knew as Colonel Tom Parker never actually existed. His real name was Andreas Cornelis van Kook, born in 1909 in Breda, Netherlands. At age 20, he boarded a ship and entered the United States illegally, abandoning everything, including his own family. He changed his name, invented a new identity, and claimed he was born in West Virginia. For decades, nobody questioned it. Here is what makes this bizarre. Parker was not just some nobody trying to disappear. He became one of the most powerful men in entertainment, managing the biggest star on the planet. He had money, connections, and influence at the highest levels. Yet he never once attempted to legalize his status. The Alien Registration Act of 1940 offered amnesty to illegal immigrants. It would have been simple for someone with Parker's resources, but he refused. Why would someone deliberately remain illegal when fixing the problem was that easy? The answer lies in what Parker left behind in the Netherlands. In May 1929, just 3 blocks from the Van Kook family home in Breda, a young woman named Anna van den Enden was brutally murdered. She was 23, recently married, killed in what appeared to be a home invasion robbery. But there was something strange about the crime scene. The killer had spread pepper around her body, likely to throw off bloodhounds. That level of premeditation suggested someone who knew what they were doing. The police investigation went nowhere. 130 handwritten pages of reports, witness statements, evidence logs. Not a single solid lead. But eyewitnesses mentioned something interesting. They had seen an unusually well-dressed man in the area that day, wearing a bright coat, light yellow. Always Tom Parker's favorite color. Within months of Anna van den Enden's murder, Andreas van Kook vanished from the Netherlands forever. He never contacted his family again, never wrote, never called. His mother died in 1958 without knowing what happened to her son. She spent nearly 30 years wondering if he was alive. That is not normal behavior for someone simply seeking opportunity in America. That is the behavior of someone running from something. Journalist Alana Nash spent years investigating Parker's past. When she obtained the original Dutch police files on the murder, she found no mention of young Andreas van Kook. But the timing of his departure, combined with his complete severing of family ties, created a shadow that followed Parker his entire life. People who knew him described a man with an ungovernable temper. In 1933, the U.S. Army diagnosed him as a psychopath after he deserted his post and suffered a breakdown in solitary confinement. Was Tom Parker a murderer? There is no proof. But there is something undeniably suspicious about a young man fleeing his country immediately after an unsolved killing, then spending the rest of his life maintaining an elaborate false identity. And that false identity cost Elvis Presley everything. Parker's illegal status was not just a personal problem. It became the invisible cage that trapped the biggest entertainer in the world. Elvis Presley never performed in Europe. He never toured Japan. He never took his show to Australia or South America. The king of rock and roll, beloved by millions worldwide, left the United States only 3 times in his entire career. All 3 trips were to Canada in 1957. You are probably wondering why that matters. Let me put it in perspective. British promoter Harvey Goldsmith tried repeatedly to bring Elvis to England. The deals he offered were worth millions. Parker turned down every single one. Privately, he admitted the truth. He was terrified to leave the United States because he did not have a passport and could not get one without exposing his illegal status. The few times Elvis performed in Canada, Parker stayed behind in border cities like Seattle and Buffalo. He could not risk crossing an international border, but he also could not risk letting Elvis tour without him. If Elvis went to Europe for months, performing to sold-out crowds, making millions, Parker would lose control. Someone might whisper in Elvis's ear about how much money his manager was really taking. Someone might suggest Elvis did not need Parker at all, so Parker made sure it never happened. He kept Elvis locked inside the United States, turning down deals that would have made them both vastly wealthier. Elvis's estate was worth just $7 million when he died in 1977. If Parker had allowed international touring, that number would have been in the hundreds of millions. But money was not really the issue for Parker. Control was. And he maintained that control through fear, manipulation, and secrets that went far deeper than anyone realized while Elvis was alive. The man who called himself Colonel wasn't actually a colonel at all. That was another lie. Parker served in the U.S. Army as a private, deserted his post in 1932, and spent time in military prison. After suffering what the Army called a psychotic breakdown, he was discharged with a diagnosis that's chilling to read now. Constitutional psychopathic state, emotional instability. The military was saying, in clinical terms, that Tom Parker was a psychopath. Years later, he convinced the governor of Louisiana to give him an honorary title of colonel as a reward for campaign work. He wore that fake rank-like armor for the rest of his life, building an image of authority and respectability. Everything about Tom Parker was performance. Everything was constructed to hide the truth. But the most destructive secret wasn't about Parker's past. It was about what he was doing to Elvis in real time, right under everyone's noses. Parker's financial abuse of Elvis was systematic and breathtaking in scope. Most managers take 10 to 15% of their clients' earnings. Parker started at 25%, which was already outrageous. Then he raised it to 50%. Think about that for a second. Elvis Presley, the most famous entertainer on the planet, was splitting his income evenly with a man who did nothing but make phone calls and sign contracts. Half of everything Elvis earned went straight into Parker's pocket. But it gets worse. Parker also charged additional fees for services he supposedly provided: expenses, consulting, administrative costs. These charges ate away at Elvis's remaining share until some years Parker actually made more money than Elvis did. In 1973, Parker negotiated the sale of Elvis's entire recording catalog to RCA. 700 songs, the rights to some of the most valuable music ever recorded. The deal was worth $10.5 million. Elvis received $4.5 million. Parker took $6 million. From a deal involving Elvis's own music, the manager walked away with more money than the artist. Even that was not the full extent of the theft. Parker never bothered to register Elvis with BMY, the organization that manages music rights and collects royalties. 33 songs that Elvis wrote or co-wrote earned him absolutely nothing in songwriting royalties because Parker could not be bothered with the paperwork. After Elvis died, financial investigators estimated Parker had defrauded the Presley estate of somewhere between $7 and $8 million in just the 3 years before Elvis's death. The total amount stolen over Elvis's entire career is incalculable. Why did Parker need so much money? Because he was losing it as fast as Elvis could earn it. The Colonel had a gambling problem that made his financial exploitation of Elvis look almost reasonable by comparison. Parker would lose $1 million a year at the casinos. That was just the starting point. Lamar Fike, one of Elvis's closest friends, watched Parker lose over $1,250,000 in 90 minutes at a roulette table. The Colonel got so deep into debt with the Las Vegas Hilton that he stopped leaving his hotel room. The casino brought a roulette wheel up to his suite so he could keep gambling without interruption. By the time Elvis died in 1977, Parker owed the Hilton more than $30 million. You might be wondering how a man with that kind of debt could keep gambling. Here it gets truly sinister. Parker made a secret deal with the casino. They would forgive his debts and give him unlimited credit on one condition: Elvis had to keep performing at the Hilton, show after show after show. 2 performances a night, 7 nights a week. Elvis became the first major star to maintain that kind of punishing schedule, and he did it because Parker needed him to. The gambling debts had to be paid somehow. Elvis knew. He figured it out eventually. He understood that he was bait, that Parker owned him, that every dollar Parker lost at the tables would be paid back through Elvis's sweat and exhaustion. He tried to fire Parker. But by that point, Parker had so much financial control that he threatened to sue Elvis for everything he had left. Elvis was terrified of being poor again. His father, Vernon, had a criminal record for check fraud, and Elvis feared Parker would expose it. So Elvis kept performing. He kept taking the pills doctors prescribed to get him through the grueling schedule. He kept destroying himself to pay off debts that were not his. Parker watched it happen. According to Larry Geller, one of Elvis's friends, Parker actually wanted the tell-all book Elvis, What Happened, to be published. The book exposed Elvis's drug abuse and erratic behavior. Parker thought the public humiliation might shock Elvis into getting help. But he never stopped booking shows, never reduced the schedule, never prioritized Elvis's health over the money Elvis could generate. The king of rock and roll died at 42 years old, exhausted and addicted, trapped in a system designed by a man who saw him as nothing more than a revenue stream. The secrets Parker kept went beyond Elvis. In 1961, Parker's brother Adam visited him in Los Angeles. Parker introduced him to Elvis but kept the visit quiet. During that week, Adam told Parker that their mother had died 3 years earlier in 1958. She never knew what happened to her son after he left the Netherlands in 1929. She never knew if he was alive or dead. Parker had abandoned his entire family and never looked back. When Parker's brother-in-law was asked to describe the man he'd worked with for nearly 50 years, he said, "That man's a mystery." Even the people closest to Parker had no idea who he really was. In 1981, author Albert Goldman published a biography exposing Parker's true identity. Around the same time, Priscilla Presley sued Parker for financial misconduct. Facing potential criminal charges, Parker made one final bizarre move. He claimed he was a citizen of no country, and therefore not subject to any country's laws. His reasoning was that he had served in the U.S. military without permission from the Dutch government, which meant he had forfeited his Dutch citizenship. Since he had never been naturalized as an American, he argued he existed in a legal gray zone. The theory was never tested in court. Parker died in 1997 at 87 years old. Despite earning well over $100 million during his career, his estate was worth barely $1 million when he died. He had gambled the rest away. His death certificate listed his birth name as Andreas Cornelis van Kook, his birthplace as the Netherlands, and noted his lack of citizenship. The secrets he had protected his entire life were finally public record. But the full truth of who Andreas van Kook really was, what he did in Breda before he fled, and why he was willing to sacrifice everything to maintain his false identity, went to the grave with him. Elvis Presley deserved better than the man who controlled him. A manager who was supposed to protect his interests instead built a career on exploitation, lies, and paranoia. The secrets Tom Parker took to his grave did not just belong to him. They belonged to Elvis too, and they cost the king everything he could have been.